All right, welcome, folks. I'm going to get started right about at 2 o'clock today because I have a kind of long one for us today. Basically, what this is going to be is it's going to be kind of like a rundown of our payroll system. I'm going to open it up. Well, I have PowerPoint with screenshots of it all opened up, and it's going to first show you how the employee or the client, if they were on the payroll, can access like pay stubs, all the employee portal side of things. And then the second topic is going to be the employer side and what the client can do, what permissions he'll have, et cetera, how to navigate the system, stuff like that. So basically, this is going to be kind of a guide on how to utilize payroll relief and all its reporting structures and all the other good stuff that it's got. It gives you all that helpful data that we use. And then so when someone comes along and asks you, hey, I need payroll data because I've got a work comp audit, or hey, I need that payroll data to cross-reference with something we did, back a couple months ago. This is going to show you how to open all that up, review your payrolls. There's probably going to be a lot of me explaining. I did get a lot of screenshots, but I didn't want to just turn this into me clicking around in the environment. I kind of want to fixate on the spots that I think are really helpful. And then if folks had questions about that, they can either, if they trickle in today, ask those questions, or you can come into our next webinar, ask about it there, and we will be able to kind of get into the nitty or grittier details if someone's interested in that. So this is sort of just like a general overview, the things I find that I use the most, the things that I'm sending to folks a lot of the time, that kind of stuff. And then, if you were to get into a situation where, it's a Saturday, you're trying to get a hold of us, no one's in office, and you need something desperately, you're able to access it yourself. You don't have to get on the phone and go, hey, how do I do this? What's going on? That this is basically just a resource to make sure that you always have access to these forms, always have access to your pay stubs, and there's no, rigmarole to get them. You can just pull them when you want them. So without further ado, let's get started here. So first things first, when your employee portal account was created, you should have received a link. If you didn't, that's okay. We can always create more. If you didn't receive a link and you don't think maybe your email was sent in or something like that, we do need an email to get that all sent out. You also should check your spam. These come from the system itself. I hit the button to send them, but then they come through Accountant's World as an automated email, and I've found that those get relegated to spam pretty frequently. So just be aware of that. And then the links are good for about 24 hours. So if you've been around for 3 months, you never saw your link, you go digging through your email and you find it, you're going to need a new one. So you can go ahead and just reach out to us, let us know, hey, I need a new link for my employee portal, and we can hook you up with that. It'll instantly create a login for you that can allow you to see your payroll data in the system. If that login is something you don't prefer, it actually bases it off your email. We have the ability to edit that for you. We can work with you to get your employee profile set up. Anything like that, anything like, I hate that email, could we use a different email? That's all stuff you can pretty much just let us know and we can get that fixed up for you real quick. If you do have issues getting logged in, I really highly recommend sending me a screenshot. The error 90% of the time is just a flat no access, which means we probably have to reset your login links. But if it is anything other than that, there'll typically be an error code, and I'll probably have to input a ticket. So if you do, log in, it throws up an error code. Please send me a screenshot of that. If it just gives you the generic, hey, I can't log in, you could just let us know the link is expired, or send a screenshot of that as well, and then we can kind of troubleshoot a little more accurately. I would hate to, reset you 3 times, go, what's going on, and then find out there's an error code and we need to get, someone a little more technical involved. So just I highly recommend, if you're having any issues getting logged in, you're having any issues, using the two-factor authentication, that's another one that scrambles up a lot. Just send me a screenshot of the issue, let me know, and then I can determine, is this something I can just reset, or is this something we'll need to call Accountant's World real quick and see if they can figure out what's going on. Which, if that is the case, if you're like desperate to get in your portal and you're like, I really don't want you to, put in a ticket, I can make it high priority. They'll respond quick. They're not gonna, hang out for 2 weeks and not respond to that ticket. And if we don't get a response that day, I got a phone number for them. So, I have contacts over at Accountant's World who talk to us directly. So, we can reach out to them and figure it out if it is a little more extreme than just a reset. So yeah, your login page is going to look something like this. Sometimes there will be a firm code asked. If that's the case, you can reach out to us and we can give you the firm code. But I actually also have a link that has the firm code built into it automatically. So if you're getting that third bar above username that says firm code, you can actually just reach out to me, say, hey, Evan, I think I've got the old link. Can you send me the link that doesn't ask for the firm code? And then we can just bypass that step. But then from there will have been a username sent to you through the process, and you will create a password once everything's been sent out to you. And so once you generate all that, you're going to plug it in here, and it's going to allow you to log into our system. Now, once you log in, it's going to look something like this. And like always, I like to let people know this CA restaurant, they're not a real client. They're like a test client we've set up in the system. So we're not showing anybody's real data here, which will become apparent as you watch the employee names like Joe Bartender, or I can't remember someone, the waitress. Hey, so uh, basically, you're going to open this up. You've got the three important ones are going to be profile pay stubs and the W-2s. The homepage doesn't do anything. You don't have to worry about that. It's just going to look like this. It's going to basically be a landing page that says, hey, welcome to your portal, and give you some little basic info. So the first important page is going to be that employee profile page. And I understand this is kind of relegated to my corner here, so I apologize. But it allows you to see your info. It'll allow you to see your PTO if we're tracking PTO within payroll relief, which I know some clients do, some clients don't. If you think we're tracking payroll in payroll relief and you are an employee and you believe, oh, I don't see my payroll in there, check with your employer first. We've got some folks tracking it on their own side of things. They've got their own systems. So don't just expect PTO to be in here, but if we're tracking your PTO, this is where you'll see it. Talk to your employer if you're unsure. Your contact info will be in here. So typically we will, there might be some forms that go out throughout the year and we might say, hey, have your employees review their contact info. This is where you can come see everything. And then if an employee or the client notices, hey, Joe does not live in Flushing, NY anymore. We need to get that changed. Then you can pop it up. I can go in, change it all up, and we'll be able to help you out. I don't think you're going to have a whole lot of edit capability on the employee side. I do believe you can edit your email address, and if anything else needs edits, you're probably going to have to reach out to us and let us know. A lot of it, like this tax information, is actually coming from a different part of the program. I have to go into like your employee setup, change your tax info. So if you did notice any discrepancies, don't try to change it yourself. Just let your employer know, and then or let us know, if you've got a direct line to us, so we can fix it. There's also deductions that'll show up here. So if you've got a retirement plan or anything like that, it'll show up on this page, kind of explain what's going on. And there's a little more like your payroll info, so your overtime rates, your regular hourly rates, just some helpful stuff that can kind of let you see, okay, this is how it's set up in the system. That's how they're calculating our numbers, et cetera, et cetera. These taxes, a lot of people will ask me, well, how are my taxes being calculated? The system calculates everything based off of an IRS document. So if you think there are any issues with your taxes, what we're going to do is hand you a W-4 and say, please fill this out. We can't really advise you on that. That's a legal thing. They don't want employers and they don't want, accounting firms to basically be telling people, here's what you should put in for your taxes. It's up to them to look through it, decide, oh, I've got X dependents, I'm the head of household, et cetera, et cetera. So we're probably just going to drop off that form and say, hey, fill this back out. And then we're going to input exactly what you hand over to us because we don't want to, conflate that responsibility. We don't want to say, yeah, we informed Steve to put ones in all the slots and mark himself as single. That just gets muddy. So we would prefer to just hand that form off to the employee, have them refill it out, and then we'll re-enter that information. So that would be what we do if you notice any discrepancies there. The other tab is your pay stubs tab. It's pretty simple. Got a drop down menu. Pick your pay stub, and then it's going to provide you a preview. And then you can see here this little download guy. You can just click that or print it. If it doesn't Up here immediately, there might be a little print icon at the bottom. Once you select your pay stub, click that, and its preview will show up. I'm pretty sure it shows up automatically once you select the drop down, but just in case, most forms that you try to receive through payroll relief, once you kind of pull the form up, you'll have to hit that little print button down at the bottom. So I just like to bring that up. It's kind of in a hidden spot. When I was getting trained on this program, I asked folks all the time, where is the print button? Because it is down in like a gray bar at the very bottom of the screen. So just something to be aware of. But yeah, you can pick your pay stubs here, review it. If you're having any sort of concerns about your pay, you can check it over here. We did recently learn that even if your approval date is a week before your payroll date, I do not believe these stubs populate until your payroll date has come around. So if you're really hoping to get those payroll pay stubs, they're typically sent out with the payroll. We do not have a way for the employee to view them instantly. This is just having to do with if there were any issues, payroll relief doesn't automatically populate it. So then we could go edit those issues, fix the issues, and the employee isn't seeing a whole bunch of different stubs. So then once it actually goes through and approves, that's when the employee can see the stubs. That's why we do send out that copy with your payroll approval, is so you do get to see them early, you get to see them on time. When we process the payroll, you're able to review them and see if there are any errors, provide them to who needs them, etc. And then the final page on the employee profile that's really worth noting is going to be your W-2 page. Again, this is one of those forms that we send out information on, and we'll say, hey, I need you to review this form, make sure everything's correct, because we don't want to get to the IRS and they tell us it's wrong, and then we have to, wait on someone's taxes or something crazy because they don't have a W-2 completed. So you can retrieve your copies here. You'll basically, same concept, there'll be a drop down that lets you select the year. There'll be a little print icon, and you'll be able to grab these W-2s. When we do reach out and say, hey, is all this info correct? If you, the client, are not sure, if you're not sure if someone's moved, if they've gotten married, etc., maybe you're not on site all the time, maybe you're out of state and you've got minimal contact, I would highly recommend letting folks know, please review your W-2s. Please go through, take a look at them, make sure that, your address is correct. It actually charges a fee when we go through, pull these back, and cause a bunch of amendments. So we don't want to push those fees onto you because someone didn't look over their W-2s. So please have your employees review them themselves. They're the ones putting the info in, so they're going to be the best arbiter if it's accurate. Push it to them, say, hey, is your social security number is another one that I see frequently incorrect. And it can just be, a matter of when the employee sent in their new hire documents, they hit a 2 instead of a 1. It can be anything like that. I would just have them review it, make sure all those documents are correct before they get submitted. We try to give you a good period to review it before. And so once we send out that email saying, hey, is all this correct? I would just forward it to the appropriate employee and say, hey, is your W-2 correct? Can you get to the system and check, yada, yada. So the employer portal is going to be a little more in depth. You're going to clearly have a lot more that you can do on the employer side of things. We don't really want an employee to have a whole lot of editing info because, we don't want them to accidentally mess up taxes or anything like that. Maybe they don't understand. Then there's still a filter of here's my W-4, where your payroll professionals will look at it and interpret it from there. And then if we have questions, we can reach out to the employee. So there is going to be a little more editing access on the employer side. Of course, employees can't edit all the employee info. They can really only look at their own stuff. So the employer is going to have kind of an umbrella view of their whole, location. The big two critical things that I really want everyone to internalize is number one over here in the bottom right. That is your reporting section. If you're ever needing reports, almost all of them are in here. It is such a helpful section. You can use it from anything from, like I said, audits to I just need some peace of mind on X, Y, and Z. So that little document here with the number one by it, please review this when you got some time. It can save you tons of time. It can save you time emailing us for it, and then us, giving you a rigmarole and saying, hey, actually, all your forms are here. Can you go get them? This system will just allow you to pull, all the data that you need directly, and then you don't have to wait on anyone. There's no delays. you can get all that instantaneously. So when an auditor does show up, you don't have to do, phone tag with us. Then we can just pull the documents, send them over. It's done. The other thing that everyone should make note of is those little folks down there, the little folks icon circled with the two. That is your employee info menu. So if you've got an employee who reaches out to you and says, "Hey Bob, I moved from Festus up here to St. Louis. I need you to change my address." That's where you can do that at. Again, I'm happy to do all this kind of stuff as well when it comes to the employee info, especially because like on the tax side, it can get very confusing. But if you do have something, some employers do want to be able to open that up and change that kind of detail. And I have no issue if you're wanting to change addresses, et cetera, et cetera. So you can open it up there, make those changes. I'm not pushing that off to you, but I do highly recommend it. It also allows you, when we do those W-2s, you don't have a lot of client access. But you want to review your documents and our documents, they're all housed in there. Everything that I'm sending off the W-2 pulls exactly from the system. So the address is coming from this employee profile location, the taxation data, all that. So just that is a good spot to review. I think the reporting is probably a little more important for clients because they're going to need those reports at certain points. And so, that employee info is something we can more handle. But it is nice to be able to pop in there, see, hey, what's going on? Then if you feel like, something has been input wrong, you can review it and then we can kind of say, hey, it either has or hasn't. And, you'll have more oversight and communication over this part of your payroll. Here's kind of an overview of that reporting tab. Now, all of these reports are important. Every single one is important. I've used most of these reports. The only ones that are a little bit odd, even though I have it highlighted, this payroll set is actually just a block of reports in your system. So it is really helpful. It is the one we send out when you get a pre-approval. So it does have like a bunch of information on it, but it is just an amalgamation of some of these other reports. I don't use deductions register a whole lot, but if you were trying to track your deductions, you could. I don't find that a lot of folks need, the W-2 employee summaries, stuff like that. But, ones I haven't highlighted that I have used: local wages and taxes, state wages and taxes, federal wages and taxes, the tax payments, the retirement transmittal. All these reports are helpful. I've really just highlighted the most critical ones. These are the ones I see getting sent out the most. These are the ones I see getting asked about the most. It's going to be your payroll history. So that's going to be kind of a breakdown of your payroll. Summary is going to be the same thing, but it's going to be just one payroll at a time. Your tax and liabilities payments are going to be what has gone out, what has been withheld, what is still waiting to pay but has actually been withheld. It is a detailed representation of what's going on in your taxes. Your ACH report is the actual ACH funds coming out of the account. For example, if you have a ton of reimbursements, they're not always going to show up. Ton of reimbursements, a ton of I don't know, maybe medical insurances. You got a whole bunch of things that aren't necessarily like regular wages. And maybe you're seeing discrepancies on your payroll of like, well, the wages are lower than the total payroll cost, and I don't really know what's going on. That ACH report can tell you basically what's actually going to come out of your account. It's gonna help kind of put those confusions to bed. It's going to say, hey, flat out $6,000 is coming out. We can sit down and kind of discuss and hash out what's taxes, what's deductions, what's reimbursement, why it's appearing like this. But that ACH report is going to be a more cut and dry as what's coming out of your account. So when people have things like this, so maybe you have like a ton of money in reimbursements and you feel like that's throwing things off. You got a bunch of money in like per diems and all the taxation is off. Some of it's pre-tax, some of it's post-tax, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on here. I recommend that report. And then last but not least is that employee list. I do see this get referenced in audits a lot. Another thing it's good for is just pulling that list and being like, who is even still getting reported on this payroll? Do I need to tell them to get them out of here? Because frankly, unless you're letting me know, hey, this person's been terminated, I'm not sure. They might come back up. they're just getting unchecked in the payroll, and that's a good way to look through and let me know, hey, this person's gone, hey, this person's gone, and then we can go mark them all as inactive, and they'll be in the background. We could reactivate them if they do come back. But I don't want to, have a bunch of slop on your employee lists and all that. So that's a good way to review, make sure we have all the correct data, make sure we're seeing the employees we're supposed to be seeing, etc. So, like I said, that payroll history is your overall breakdown. You can extend that out. So, like, you can do a whole year, you can do a quarter, you can really edit heavily where you want those payroll reports to be. So, say actually you're pulling payroll summary reports and you're a biweekly payroll, but you want to look at the reports weekly. You can set these payroll history reports to pull a weekly history report. So, it's going to give a little more of a breakdown on what's happening. It won't be such a grand overview, or it can be a massively grand overview of everything, which I don't necessarily always find is helpful, but auditors will ask for that kind of stuff. Sometimes they might say, hey, I want this period to this period. And then you can go in and go, oh, they wanted 11/16/25 to 11/16/26. Set those dates, pull the data, and then hand it to the auditor and go, here you go, man. I don't want to mess with this anymore. So then that kind of takes out a lot of the guesswork. It takes out of pulling lots of reports, sending it to the auditors. I've actually been having a lot of auditors lately. They'll ask you for a payroll summary report. You'll send them the weeklies or the bi-weeklies or whatever your payroll is. And then they go, whoa, this is way too many reports. And then you can send them that history and explain, hey, we do not have a summary report that covers, a whole year. We have a history report. Let me know if anything is missing from this. So yeah, that's a super useful report. Payroll summary is really good just for like, did something go wrong this payroll? Bob is telling me that his PTO didn't get added. Can I go check the payroll report and see if it is or is not there? Or Steve is telling me that he's pretty sure that a deduction that shouldn't be getting deducted anymore is still showing up on his check. Can you help him out with that? So, that's what those are kind of for. They're good for spot checks. They're good for saying, hey, last week's payroll, how'd it go? The tax liabilities and payments. If you're ever concerned about like, okay, I'm seeing these tax payments coming out, this is a good way to open it up. It's going to show you who it's going to. This is a federal withholding, this $500 tax payment. It actually hasn't even been paid yet. We're going to send it on 4/15. We're basically just holding that in a holding account for you at the moment. And then 4/15, that's going to go to the government and count as paid, on time, taken care of. So basically, that's just going to show you a list of everything that's being taken out of your payroll, when it's being sent, when it's due, all that good stuff. That is a super helpful report if you're worried about your taxes. It can clear up a lot. And then, like I said, that ACH report is really good for the totals of everything. So breaking it down a little further, this is your employee tab. The three spots that I would really say that you guys should be focusing on would be your contact info. Again, this is that same kind of thing you were seeing as the employee portal. But this is where it can actually be edited. So if an employee tells you, hey, my zip code is actually 113354, I made a typo, you can go in here and change that kind of stuff. Again, we'll change this for you. I'm not going to say, hey, it's a fee for me to fix any errors on this. But some folks do want to edit it themselves. Some folks put in their own payrolls and are fairly autonomous. And so if that's the case, I want to bring your attention to this area. The other place that you're going to go a lot is going to be the compensation. That's where you can see default hours, your default rates. You can see all the pay types, what they're being paid for each pay type. And so if you're wondering how much is Bob getting paid for his overtime, he says it's not 1.5. You can come in here, you can review it. If there is an issue, you can let us know. Or you can make the change and just say, hey, we need to make corrections, yada, yada, whatever works best for you. I just want there to be a visibility on this kind of stuff. So if you are concerned that maybe there was something wrong, you can come in here and spot check and say, oh, look at that. Joe Bartender, his overtime is in fact correct. We can let him know, hey, it is at a rate of 22.5. You're good to go. Something like that. So I do recommend looking at this tab. The very last tab is this taxes tab. And I'm going to be honest, I don't recommend, unless you're, really experienced and you're working in like one state, you've been doing it time and time again. I don't really recommend messing with this tab. This tab can cause a world of hurt if you're not entirely sure about like your local tax laws. So just to give like a few like things that I've seen where an employer has typed in their own info and then things have gotten kind of spicy afterwards. Um, Not realizing that maybe an employee has a local tax. Some municipalities have a local tax, some municipalities don't. Maybe your employee is two municipalities over. Your municipality does not have a local tax. You do not think there are local taxes for the state. You just put the employee in like everybody else, and then boom, you had to register for local taxes. They didn't pay any of the local taxes. Turns into a huge headache. So that's one of the things I've seen. Another thing is the way states interact when you have a worker in one state who either commutes to another state or they are a remote worker, which gets even more gray, and they work in another state. Just throwing in a Missouri, like as if they're Missouri when they're working in Wisconsin, can cause issues. There's reciprocity sometimes for states where they've got little deals where, hey, you can pay to one and the other's going to count it. There's other states who have specific rules on like, hey, if you're a remote employer, I expect, or a remote employee, I expect you to be paying taxes specifically to the state you're working in. There are some states that are like, well, I want you to pay to the state that you're working in, and I want you to, also be paying your home state SUDA, and I want you to be paying. So it can just turn into a really complicated mess. Again, when it comes to these, I highly, highly recommend having the employees fill out the tax forms, sending them in to us, and having us take a look. If you only have employees in one state, please, please, please let us know if you're going to go look into another state, because then I can kind of give you a basis of like, yeah, really, it's not too bad to get things set up in Missouri. I know you've got these Missouri employees who are now working in an Illinois business, so we need that business to get all registered in Missouri. That's not too hard. Here's what it's going to entail. Here's our estimate, etc. Whereas, some states are going to be like, for example, Ohio and Pennsylvania are states that have a whole lot of rules when it comes to where things vary, where you're living, who gets what. Ohio will not do, workers' comp insurance. They only have a state option. There's all these rules that you can get in the weeds with. And, I can tell you, those are going to be ugly states. If you're expecting to hire someone on quickly for Pennsylvania, we are not going to be able to get them set up, fast. It basically, we want to be able to give you a good, warning on what this is going to entail, what it'll do, what our estimate will look like if you're wanting us to set it up. We don't want to spring that on you. We don't want to just say, hey, it's going to cost X, please take care of it. We really want to be able to advise you like, hey, Pennsylvania is a mess. Here's all the things that, that could happen. I just want to make sure you're playing with the full deck before you hire this person on, and then get yourself into an ugly tax situation. That's just kind of the way we're looking at that. We want to make sure that you don't get yourself into a sticky situation. We don't want to have yourself, oh, this person works totally in Delaware, they're remote. I'm just going to set them up for Delaware taxes, and then it turns out, well, actually, your state has a different opinion on that, and we're going to have to go call a bunch of state offices, figure out exactly what's supposed to happen, and then we'll correct your taxes from there. So, just a caution. It's my job to go read through all these state tax websites. It's my job to go figure out the differences between the two. We don't need to put that on you. Just send us the tax information, and then we can kind of give you the information to play with that full deck. So okay, Florida doesn't have any income tax, but Georgia does, and so those people interacting with each other are going to be interesting. Things like that. So just to cover a couple other things, that first tab, it's going to generate W-2s, 1099s, etc. So if anything's wrong on there, it's going to be wrong on those W-2s and those 1099s. Again, those taxes tabs are based off of the W-4s and state W-4s. If we don't, have accurate info and you're sending in W-4s, like say you're sending in Missouri W-4s and none of your employees are in Missouri's, I'm putting in Missouri info. I just want everyone to be advised. Like if we have folks working out of state and you need to get registered out of state, please let us know. Don't just send in the old data and hope we're going to catch it. If I get a Missouri W-4, I'm thinking that's a Missouri worker. And, even though the address might be different, it sort of starts adding up as, okay, this is supposed to be in Missouri. Is his address outdated? We just want to avoid that. And a lot of times we're getting these new employee infos like 2 days before payroll is ran, and we're already kind of in a tight spot. So I do not want to, be making guesses when it comes to your new folks. That compensation tab always allows you to edit or view their employee compensation and pay types. Like I said, I'll do all this for you. You do not have to get in there and be editing pay types. I do not expect that of you. But if you do want to get in there, if you do want to see how it works, that's where we get all that data from. Viewing your taxes is another really helpful thing this system can be used for. So once you're in all that, maybe you're looking through the employee profile. Let me actually scroll back to kind of remind you how it looks start here. So when you're on this dashboard, you always have these same, folks on this left-hand side. So even though I'm already in the taxes tab here, these are going to remain constant. You're going to click on these tax forms and you want to look at those upcoming forms due, or maybe you want to look at your tax payments. There's a couple other options in here, but I like looking at the forms due because it's going to tell you when are things due, have they been filed, here's the forms. If they have been filed, you can come here, you can basically you'll checkbox this little form here, and then again, the little print icon will appear at the bottom. You can print it, download it, everything you need to. So then when the government shows up and says, hey, I need 941s, as simple as logging in, pulling those 941s and saying, here you go. These are very accessible. We want them to be very accessible. There's also a cloud cabinet system, which if you haven't logged into it, that's totally okay. It does very similar things to payroll relief when it comes to storing these forms, but it just kind of organizes them a little better. It's almost like a Dropbox kind of situation that's way more secure and is like a affiliated with payroll relief. It's really just connected to payroll relief. But we're basically able to checkbox all these forms, click cloud cabinet, and then it's going to go into like 2025 941s in your cloud cabinet. Everything's nice and organized, easy for you to find. So if you haven't utilized cloud cabinet, that's another way you can go do this kind of thing. I'm trying to stick all the pay stubs into cloud cabinet as well. And it's really easy. It's super easy to get things into cloud cabinet. So it's pretty much a checkbox. I can checkbox a ton of things all at once, click one button, and then they're in there. So if you're ever needing anything in Cloud Cabinet, do not feel like you can't ask for it. Do not feel like I'm going to charge you a fee. We're trying to make sure everything is in Cloud Cabinet. So if anything is ever missing, just let me know. We'll pop in there. I will click the one button that we need to click, and then it'll be in. So please, 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 if you are utilizing Cloud Cabinet, you're noticing that there are gaps, let us know and we can fill those gaps. Some of those gaps might be because some folks were on QuickBooks and then they came over to payroll relief. I did discover recently that we can get that QuickBooks information into Cloud Cabinet. So if you're ever wanting that info, if you're like, I can't access it anymore, can you get it in there? Yeah, we can. So I've had some folks reach out and say, hey, I'm doing an audit. I'm trying to make sure everything is in the right spot. Can you just make sure that those QuickBooks things are in Cloud Cabinet with everything else? Easy peasy, no problem. Like I said, we want everything in there. Printing checks. So if you need a pay stub, if you need to leave a note on the pay stub, if you need to go to, pull all your pay stubs just so you can review this last pay period, you're going to head over to print checks. Then you'll basically have this little menu here. I apologize. You can add your pay stub comments. You can print just the stub instead of like the whole voided check. You can select which payroll you want. You can select if you want like employees. So maybe you have one employee. We find out oh, hey, they were supposed to get 20 extra hours and we forgot it. Can we purge that employee, reprocess it, and everything's good to go? Sure. Let's do all that and get it done. Then you can come in here and go, well, I want Bob's newest paycheck. I'm going to click that payroll that we ran. It was an additional payroll. I'm going to add in this pay stub comment, updated stub. I'm going to print it off. It's going to say that this is the updated one. It's going to say that it was the additional payroll ran the next day or the later in that day. And then you can hand it off to Bob and say, hey, I fixed it up. Here is the pay stub comment that says we corrected it. We're good. Um, you can access anyone on this payroll. If folks are asking for stubs, it's a good way to get to it quickly. I'm not sure. This will be something to experiment. If anyone pops in here, I believe while the employees cannot access the stubs until the payroll is processed, I'm fairly certain the employer can. So if you ever are in a situation where, I don't know, maybe you've got a guy who had an issue on his last payroll, he's feeling antsy, he wants to see his payroll today, give me the pay stub. You can come in here, type in, pay stub to confirm, print it off, send it to the guy. He's got it instantly. Problem solved. Again, these payroll or these pay stubs do come to everyone. They come to everyone in one bulk document. So I get that if you're not, printing them, that can be inconvenient. This is where I would go to get singular pay stubs. So that is actually everything for today. I don't believe anyone ended up popping in for questions. Nope. So yeah, that will be our presentation. Sorry, it was a little longer. I know we're cresting about 40 minutes here. Like always, there'll be another topic next week, 2 p.m. Central. We send the topics out Monday morning. So if you're wanting to see, if you ever watch these on YouTube and you're like, man, I wish I was getting to these so I could be asking questions about this topic. If you ever want to review the topic before you come in, they get sent out on Monday. Also, though, I've been trying to push this. If you see a topic on Monday and it is, me going over the systems and you're like, that is unfortunate, I had a tax liabilities question, you can still come to these. We do not want to just shut them down to only the topic we want to present. Essentially, what I'm trying to do here is find topics that we have frequent questions about, almost like an FAQ topic, put them here as just an informational, both on the YouTube and for people to come ask questions. If folks don't ask questions, that's okay. We've got the informational. And if folks do ask questions, then we will, if there's nothing sensitive, air those questions for everyone to look over. And then, ideally, when someone goes, hey, Evan, how do I get in here and access my pay stubs? I have a video that goes over that, and it's just sort of a nice informational thing for everyone. That said, this is also a time for you guys to come and get any questions you might want out with us. So if you've got like burning payroll questions and it's just payroll topics this week, so it's going to be me there, please come. Even if it's not, on topic with what I'm going to present, I'm going to present this. If we did have folks in the chat right now who had burning questions that had nothing to do with our topic, I'm basically going to call the presentation quits. Then I'm going to say, all right, we've opened the floor for questions. If you've got something related or unrelated, this is your time to ask us. This is really an attempt to make it easier to have face-to-face, one-on-one time with us. So you can ask those questions, get a nice explanation, and maybe someone else will benefit from that explanation. If you ever do have questions and it's like, hey, I've got a very specific issue that's kind of like got some personal things wrapped up into it. I'm fine talking to you about it, but I don't really want everyone else to know. You can let me know. If there are other people on the call, we'll wait till after they leave. I'll kill the recording and then we can have a private conversation as well. But really, we're trying to open up this time from about 2 to 3. Folks trickle in, ask any questions that they may have, anything like that. So if you do see a topic coming up and you're like, I do not care about this topic, but I do have something I want to ask, please feel free to come anyway. We're really happy to have you here. I'll derail the first, if you come in early, I haven't started the presentation yet, and you've got somewhere to be, I'll derail the first 15 minutes to do our question and answer first. And then if more folks trickle in after the presentation and they've got their own questions, no skin off my back. I will spend some time talking to them. That's valuable to you guys. It's valuable time if we're answering questions and helping you out. So I just wanted to put that out there. So thanks everybody for watching. Again, there will be another one at 2 next week. So feel free to come check out what that topic will be. And I will see you guys next time. Have a great weekend.